Ontario shortens the vaccine interval for Indigenous people living in cities.
I think it's really good news. I think it's life-saving news.
They're now eligible for their second vaccine dose just weeks after getting their first jab. We'll have more on the policy change and reaction. Plus,
we have been really trying to spearhead this fundraiser.
How the city's South Asian community is coming together to help those in India as the country continues grappling with a catastrophic second wave. And
that goat would have been distraught and upset and crying at that time.
Her name is Juniper, and she's 3 months old, and Toronto police are asking for your help in locating the baby goat after she was stolen from the Riverdale farm. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Ontario had already shortened the interval between vaccine doses for Indigenous people living on reserves. Well, now those living in urban centres like Toronto are also eligible to get their second shot much sooner. Ardelia Ashry has more on the change and why it matters.
Some good news for members of the Indigenous community living in cities. Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald is on the Provincial Vaccine Task Force. She announced this afternoon those in her community are now eligible to get their second dose much sooner.
And so there is a sense of relief that they will be getting their second dose.
Toronto has the largest Indigenous population in Ontario. This includes 70,000 First Nations, Inuit and Métis people. They will no longer have to wait 16 weeks for their second jab. That interval has been shortened between 21 to 28 days, the original recommendation from manufacturers. Dr. Janet Smiley is a Métis physician.
Good news. I think it's life-saving news.
Smiley says COVID-19 has hit Toronto's Indigenous community 3 times harder than the rest of the city's population. She says this is largely due to social inequities.
Thousands and thousands of First Nations, Inuit and Métis people in the city of Toronto got COVID. And actually, the data consistently shows that our rates of hospitalization are higher.
She says the vaccines are secured and the focus now is on rolling out 140,000 doses for those in the community. People can go to this Indigenous vaccine website or call the number on the site to learn how to book an appointment. In the meantime, Smiley says they are still working on ways to have more representation at clinics.
Toronto Public Health could have some Indigenous vaccine days at some of their clinics, but the idea is that they would find an Indigenous community organization that would partner with them.
Chief Archibald says she is certain the shortened interval between doses will prevent hospitalizations and deaths.
We knew that vaccines were actually going to be sent, but now they're getting into people's arms and that light is becoming brighter for all of us.
Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
A data issue may have led to a lower COVID-19 case count in Ontario today, about 3,100. But overall numbers are heading in the right direction. But as Ali Chiasson tells us, even if the worst of wave 3 is behind us, health officials say avoiding a fourth wave is critical.
Looking at the third wave's case counts, you can see the numbers trending downward. The rolling average in the last 2 weeks went from over 3,600 to just over 3,200. If you look at the number of new critical care admissions, the curve is starting to drop as well.
It's still a huge number, but it really confirms to me that we've probably seen the worst day of this third wave.
The head of Ontario's Hospital Association says we are far from out of the woods.
Our ICU occupancy is still at completely unacceptable levels. Make no mistake, the hospital system has only been able to deal with this challenge through superhuman efforts.
Okay. I will say that the hospitals are full and busting at the seams.
Take it from one of the ICU doctors. We had to fly in from Newfoundland to help.
Which is something that we're not used to in Newfoundland, and I think probably even here they're not used to.
Dr. Alison Fury and her team is headed home this week after 10 days of punishing work in critical care in the city. What do our hospitals need right now, she says?
A break.
Specifically, we need to avoid a fourth wave. And health officials say the vaccination rate alone is not enough to do that.
Let's not make the same mistake that was made in the second wave when public health measures were lifted far too prematurely. It's what absolutely accelerated the third wave, and it's what made it as punishing and as serious as it continues to be.
As of right now, the stay-at-home order is set to expire in 2 weeks. Regardless if it's extended or there's a partial reopening of sorts, getting vaccinated and following public health guidelines must continue. Critical care physician Callie Barrett says people should see more than just the COVID patients in the case counts.
There are 250,000 patients, over 250,000 people in this province whose surgical procedures, many of them are incredibly consequential to their long-term health and quality of life, that have been put on hold. And as long as our ICUs are as full as they are, those procedures cannot go forward. There are lives at stake. There is people's long-term quality of life at stake. We really cannot afford to mess this up again.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police say they will continue to crack down on large gatherings this weekend after issuing hundreds of tickets this week alone. Dedicated enforcement teams responded to 296 incidents this week. 338 tickets were given out, over 100 more compared to last week. In one incident, all 14 people at a house party near Bloor and Dundas were ticketed. 16 criminal charges were also laid in the past week. Toronto police are asking for the public's help to locate a baby goat after it was stolen from the Riverdale farm.
It is reported that between the hours of 5:30 on Wednesday, May 5th, to 7 a.m. on Thursday, May 6th, the suspect or suspects entered the pen in the farm and stole a 3-month-old Nubian goat named Juniper.
This is Juniper. She weighs about 30 pounds. As you can see, she has black and silver fur, brown legs, and white ears. She has an identical twin sibling named Justine, who was left in the pen. Police say Juniper would not leave the pen without her mother and would have likely been distraught and cried out. They say staff at Riverdale Farm are upset and extremely concerned as goat kids rely on their mother for sustenance. Anyone with information is asked to come forward. Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, nice to see some more of that sunshine today.
Yeah, it is nice, right? When you get a little bit of clearing coming back at us. And we really have an interesting forecast going on as we head into this weekend. And I'll kind of walk you through it. Obviously, tonight kind of bookended with some wet conditions. Also, a few isolated showers at risk to the west end of the GTA, but not seeing too much development there. Into tomorrow morning, still wet into eastern Ontario. We will have some cloud cover around the Golden Horseshoe and even some patchy fog. So be aware, though, maybe some reduced visibility. Once we see that cloud cover moving out, we get into more sunshine, and then what does that do? Well, there's some instability to this air mass, so more sunshine we get tomorrow afternoon, that will bring some pop-up showers, some convective stuff. So a few showers popping up here and there. You can see it's largely to the west and to the east where we would get into that, but just don't get caught off guard, okay? Now let's go ahead and show you your temperatures tonight. It is a cool night, 3 degrees. Tomorrow, though, we're going to rebound a little better than today's highs. In many cases, didn't even get out of the high single digits. So 14 degrees for tomorrow afternoon. And of course, we've got the Mother's Day forecast that's coming up.
Thanks, Colette. To India now, where the COVID-19 situation remains desperate tonight. The country reported more than 400,000 new infections today, a record high. There were nearly 4,000 deaths recorded in the past 24 hours. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau outlined the assistance Canada is providing India. And as our Greg Ross tells us, many people right here in the GTA are also lending a hand.
It's a crisis that is spiraling out of control, and it has left many Indian Canadians feeling helpless.
The situation in hospitals, they're completely maxed out. There is simply no beds left for anyone in India right now. And so people are unable to get the medical care and the medical need.
Sabina Vohra Miller is the co-founder of the South Asian Health Network. They usually focus on helping South Asians in Peel, where she is based, but now the focus has switched to India.
So what we're trying to do right now is just raise awareness of what's happening in India, and we're doing this through some of the partnerships we have in the community with other South Asian organizations.
Awareness and money. Vohra Miller is in direct contact with healthcare workers on the ground in India, and they are fundraising to purchase the supplies they say they need the most.
We've collected $400,000 already. We have a goal of collecting $1 million.
While PPE and drugs are high on the list of needs, more than anything, they need oxygen.
Put together the shipment of 300 oxygen generators. Took us 4 or 5 days to consolidate and and locate these equipments all over North America.
Dr. Steve Gupta founded the Gupta Family Foundation in Toronto. He used his connections to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase these oxygen concentrators and then fast-track the shipment, which is now on its way to India. He says it wasn't difficult to convince people to help.
Their eyes well up and they see the television pictures. And we want to help these people.
It brings tears to your eyes.
Dr. Budhendra Dubey helped raise funds for the oxygen concentrators. He's also trying to ship about $25,000 worth of medication, but it hasn't been easy.
Because of the drug regulation, etc., that they have between India and here is very difficult, but we try.
And he says he will keep trying because time is of the essence in this fight India is facing with COVID-19.
Critical medications and critical things like oxygen are running dangerously low. In fact,
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The Rainbow Pride flag will fly outside Toronto Catholic schools for the first time next month. The school board approved the change during a marathon meeting last night, but it didn't come without resistance. Nick Boisvert has more on the decision and why students hope it's a sign of more changes to come.
In a mostly empty chamber late into Thursday evening, the ground under Toronto's Catholic School Board moved just a little.
I love being a part of that change, that history for the board.
Last night, school board trustees voted to formally recognize Pride Month for the first time this June, which means this flag will make its first appearance at Catholic schools across Toronto.
I am part of the 2S LGBTQ+ community, so this is something very personal to me. And knowing that the board recognizes Pride Month and will fly the Pride flag at the CEC in all schools is just so encouraging for students like me.
We're really hoping that this causes a ripple, and hopefully other boards can start to do the same as us.
The decision to celebrate Pride Month was largely supported at the meeting, including during a delegation by former Premier Kathleen Wynne. She was met with some expected resistance along familiar lines.
So my question to Ms. Wynne is, do you believe it is appropriate to encourage Catholic trustees to ignore the advice of their cardinal and to fly the flag of a movement which explicitly rejects the teachings of our church?
The Toronto Catholic District School Board is a publicly funded board in Ontario, and as such is required and expected to create a safe environment for all of its students and staff.
The Pride flag is a lie. It's not about diversity, inclusion, and acceptance. It's about conformity, exclusion, and intolerance.
Similar arguments did win out last week when the Halton Catholic Board voted against flying the rainbow flag at its schools. Social media accounts of various schools within the board suggest it was not a popular decision.
They're going to be left behind, every single one of these Catholic school boards, as they resist what I believe is the social change of time, the rise of equality, the fact that we are having this reckoning.
The TCDSB will become Ontario's third Catholic board to fly the rainbow flag and recognize Pride Month. Catholic boards in Thunder Bay and Waterloo have already made that move. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
We've considered, purchasing a place for our staff members to live.
They're planning on a busy summer in Prince Edward County, but a housing crunch has business owners pulling out all the stops to find employees a place to stay. We'll have that story after the break. Welcome back. Even though most businesses remain closed in Ontario, tourist destinations are gearing up for a very busy season. And that means hiring seasonal staff. But that's becoming a real challenge in Prince Edward County. Angelina King has more on why and how business owners are taking matters into their own hands.
Samantha Parsons is anticipating this summer is going to be another busy one at her 6-year-old brewery in Prince Edward County. She's looking to hire about 30 seasonal staff, but in recent years, that's become a real challenge. The main reason?
Definitely affordable housing. With the boom that we've seen in the real estate market.
So Parsons had to get creative, building this bunkie for her staff to live in and co-signing a lease to rent a house for some of her workers.
We've considered, purchasing a place for our staff members to live.
Thanks to booming tourism, real estate prices in Prince Edward County have been climbing for several years. Then the pandemic hit and city dwellers moved to the lakeside area, driving prices even higher. In the last year, house prices have jumped by nearly 50%. Rent has gone up by nearly 40%. By the end of March, the average sale price for a house was $821,000. Average rent for a one-bedroom apartment, nearly $1,500 a month.
It keeps me awake at night. It's just how much farther can this go?
Charles Dowdle runs the county's Affordable Housing Corporation. It was established 4 years ago to tackle what he calls an unprecedented crisis.
Our rent and our real estate price increases have outpaced Toronto, like-minded tourist communities, Kawartha, Muskoka.
He says there are developments underway to create more affordable housing over the next few years. In the meantime, Parsons is losing out on qualified employees like a candidate from Toronto.
They looked for accommodation for about 2.5 months, and it was just not a possibility for them to rent something in the county, so they chose to move to Ottawa instead.
Sarah Zomer is in a similar situation, even setting up her coach house as a bachelor apartment for her employees to stay in. She says recruiting staff is even harder during the pandemic because of changing restrictions.
It's really difficult right now because as an employer, it's not really a great offer. We may or may not be open, and we'd love to have you, but we don't know when and we don't know how many hours.
As business owners prepare to welcome guests again, they hope they'll have enough staff to keep up with what they expect will be another busy season as long as they can reopen. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Mainly clear skies this evening, becoming cloudy overnight though, with some unsettled weather on the way. Currently, it is only 6 degrees downtown. Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your extended forecast, and temperature is definitely still a bit cool, Colette, as we head into the weekend with some possible pop-up showers tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, Kelda. We do have a lot of instability as the system's kind of moving by. On Mother's Day, mostly the activity will be to the south of us. It's going to be a little bit tricky, though, if that system pushes any further north. So let me kind of explain everything. There is that isolated risk, not just with what's happening tonight, but I'm talking about tomorrow afternoon, seeing a bit of convective stuff popping up here and there. Very hard to pinpoint when you're talking about that kind of activity. The Mother's Day forecast around the GTA, it does look like we'll see the increase in cloudiness with the wet weather, any of it holding off until the evening hours. So that is looking good. Slightly different for southwestern Ontario. We'll get into that. But our temperatures, it's not going to be bad tomorrow by any means, but they are just trending below seasonal. By about mid next week, we should start to see that kind of turning around a little bit. But the daytime high, not very impressive, really, when we're talking about 9 degrees for Oshawa, Toronto, and for St. Catharines, at least elsewhere you climbed into those double digits. So Saturday starting off wet into eastern Ontario, a lot of cloud cover, and even a bit of cloud cover, even though this model not necessarily picking it up, but around the GTA, and some morning fog as well before we get rid of that after a cool night. Then we get into more sunshine into the afternoon, or a mix of sun and cloud, but that enhances the convection with that sunshine there and that energy. So some pop-up showers and thunderstorms certainly west and to the east of the city, and we have that risk as well, so even some thunderstorm activity here into southwestern Ontario. Now here we go. This is how we're starting off Mother's Day. Looks good east, central, we're right here kind of on the line with this system, which primarily wants to go to the south of us, but I think we could just get clipped there into southwestern Ontario. So that's where you have the greatest chance through the day of seeing some off and on scattered showers. Let's see if we can push that further south. Look at your temperatures though tonight with just a little bit of wet weather. And even tomorrow, like I said, in the afternoon, keep an eye to the sky, 11 to 14 for those daytime highs. And as we take a look at our temperatures tomorrow here into Toronto, well, overnight tonight after a cool night, they do rebound pretty nicely compared to today. So still about 3 degrees below seasonal, but compared to today, getting milder. Then we've got the 11th Sunday through Tuesday. Late day shower risk is there, but Monday a mix of sun and cloud, and then into next week, we should just off this map start to see those temperatures rebound. Kelda.
Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
After the break, how an Oakville restaurant is remembering grandmothers for Mother's Day.
I know there's so many amazing women, and it's not just the Italian nonas, it's the Babas of the world, right? It's the Yayas. Reach out to my guests and say, I'd love to have a picture of that woman in your life. Whoa.
At Ritorno Italian restaurant in Oakville, they celebrate moms every day with their Nonna wall. And with the pandemic interrupting another Mother's Day, they decided to do something extra special for the community. We stopped by to see what was happening.
Well, the Nonna Wall started with every restaurant that I've ever owned. I've had a dedication to my Nonna and a picture of her to inspire me. And believe me, in your restaurant business, you need inspiration. I know there's so many amazing women, and it's not just the Italian Nonnas, it's the Babas of the world, right? It's the Yayas. Reach out to my guests and say, I'd love to have a picture of that woman in your life. Whoa. We want a picture of your mother, your grandmother. Bring it in any frame you pick, a 5x7 photo, any age that has the most significance to you. So we have a lot of young moms up here, older moms, but the ones that have the picture that means the most to you. And with each Nonna picture that comes into our restaurant, we donate a full meal. We just package up all the food, bring it down to Kerr Street, and then the families just come in and get in line and collect what they need. And we have prepared over 3,500 meals now over the course of the year for various organizations. Anyone that comes to us and says, look, we need help, we will provide a meal, because our incredible guests have been generously donating so that we can continue this initiative. This 2021 Mother's Day has more significance historically, I think, than ever, because these are the women who have over a year now have struggled through pandemic with many challenges. The strength of women is what's pulling us through this pandemic, and they have carried a hefty load. Honoring these strong, beautiful women it's never been more important.
And that is our show for you tonight and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here on Monday. And we want to leave you with these pictures from the Russian Dancing with Dogs Championship. It drew hundreds of participants who competed in 2 separate categories, freestyle and synchronized dance. Have a great weekend, everyone.